History is not merely a catalogue of dates and treaties. It is the echo of human resolve against the infinite, indifferent ocean of time. Every great nation, every colossal experiment in civilization, begins with a single, fragile promise. A moment where a few brave or perhaps desperate souls turn their backs on the known world and cast their fate upon the turbulent unknown. For the first settlers of the New World, that promise was not written in law or parchment. It was carved into the very soul by the cold, biting spray of the Atlantic. It was an oath whispered in the face of annihilation, an oath under the Atlantic wind. Part 1. The Burden of the Wharf. Recap and context expansion. The docks of London in the autumn of 1634 were a riot of mud, manure, and ambition. The air was thick with the stench of tar, stale fish, and the faint, unsettling odor of unfulfilled dreams. Yet it was here, amidst the chaos of departing vessels and shouting deckhands, that the great exodus began, the monumental migration of those seeking refuge, riches, or simply a second chance. Our story belongs to one such man, Elias Thorne, a master shipwright, burdened by a silent, crushing debt. His failure, a terrible, accidental conflagration in his London workshop, had cost not only his livelihood but the life and savings of his kind patron, Master Thomas Elias. At 30 years of age, Elias possessed the broad shoulders of a laborer and the haunted eyes of a scholar, carrying the vow he had sworn over Elias's deathbed. He would rebuild their fortune, not just his own, in the wilds of the New World. "You look upon England as if she were your jailer, Thorne," rasped Silas Blackwood, the ship's first mate, the embodiment of the voyage's unforgiving pragmatism. Elias had answered, his resolve hard as the iron bolts of his trade. "She is not my jailer, Captain Blackwood. She is the ground where my debt was sown. I am going to the soil where I can harvest its redemption." The ship, the Fortune's Gambit, was a brutal democracy of suffering, forcing together separatists, indentured servants, and ambitious entrepreneurs like Elias. Below deck, the scholar Dr. Alistair Finch offered the second valuable lesson, that the New World's rhythm demanded order and necessity, requiring a shared covenant where individual ambition must bow to communal survival. The real foundation of America would be this precarious balance. Part 2. Trial by Water and the Carpenter's Redemption. Expansion. The Atlantic crossing was not a journey, it was an ordeal. The wind became a ceaseless, malevolent shriek. When a rogue wave shattered the mainmast 40 days out, it was Elias Thorne, the man of wood and mathematics, who saved them. For 8 hours, lashed by the storm, Elias directed the repair. He didn't command, he applied the immutable laws of stress and structure, turning terror into purpose. Silas Blackwood, impressed despite himself, had conceded, "You should have been an officer, Thorne. You command respect when your hands are busy." This near disaster was the crucible that forged the settlers' first unwritten covenant. They had been reduced to their most essential elements: fear, skill, and mutual dependence. Elias's quick action had inadvertently appointed him the colony's structural anchor, the man who would literally build their future. He had paid a down payment on his debt, not with coin, but with competence and courage. Part 3. The Tyranny of Nature. On the 63rd day, the cry of land brought a rush of primal, exhausting hope. But as the Fortune's Gambit anchored in the choppy waters of Massachusetts Bay, the sight that greeted them was not the welcoming shore of a promised land, but a vista of uncompromising hostility. It was December. The shore was a desolate tapestry of frozen marsh and skeletal trees, shrouded in a heavy, unforgiving silence. The vibrant green of Elias's English garden, the last image Elias held of his failed life, was replaced by shades of gray, brown, and the ominous white of lingering snow patches. "We sought freedom from the structures we left behind," Dr. Finch murmured, shivering beside Elias. "But that land is utterly unshaped. We have exchanged the tyranny of society for the tyranny of nature." The first challenge was immediate and logistical: disembarking. The ship could not risk the shallows. The men, already weakened by scurvy and starvation rations, had to row shallow tenders to the icy shore. The landing was not heroic. It was clumsy, cold, and humiliating. The first man ashore, a young separatist named Josiah, immediately fell knee-deep into freezing mud, his cry of shock smothered by the wind. Captain Blackwood took immediate command, his gruff pragmatism now their greatest asset. "No prayers yet! Build the fires! Thorne, your eyes are for the terrain. We need high ground, sheltered from the coastal wind and damnably close to water." Elias, still burdened by the exhaustion of the mainmast repair, felt the cold penetrate his very bones. His shipwright's mind began its methodical work. He wasn't seeing a wilderness, he was seeing raw materials. He observed the direction of the windbreak offered by a small ridge, noted the freshwater trickle from a half-frozen brook, and crucially marked the largest, straightest pines, potential keel timbers, that were slightly sheltered from the prevailing gales. "That ridge, Captain," Elias pointed, his breath clouding the air. "It offers a defensive line against the wind and a field of fire should unwelcome guests arrive. But the work starts here. We must unload the tools, the cannon, and the food stores immediately. We build a temporary storehouse before nightfall, or the wildlife will claim our future." The sight of the wilderness demanded not optimism, but competence. The settlers, facing the vast silent forest, learned their first lesson of the New World. Hope is a dangerous luxury. Preparation is survival. Part 4. The Weight of the Axe. The first week was a testament to human endurance against impossible odds. The days were short and brutal. Elias, alongside Blackwood, and the few men strong enough to wield an axe, became the pivot around which the colony revolved. Their first structure, the common house, was not a building, it was an act of faith. It required felling trees that outweighed any they had seen in England, dragging logs through frozen underbrush, and raising heavy beams with inadequate rope and sheer muscle. One afternoon, disaster nearly struck again. As Elias was supervising the raising of the main roof beam, a massive pine log, a supporting rope frayed. The heavy timber slipped, crashing down and narrowly missing a group of men. The sound echoed through the clearing like a judgment. A wave of despair threatened to break the survivors. "It is cursed! We are not meant to be here!" cried one of the separatists, dropping his axe and collapsing onto the frozen ground. Elias did not shout. He did something far more powerful. He stopped the panic by addressing the structural problem. He picked up the broken rope, examined the fray, and calmly instructed the men to cut 2 small sturdy braces hewn from an old stump. "The Lord does not provide easy wood, man, nor easy rope. He provides the materials and the mind to master them. The fault is not in the wood, but in our haste. We will brace it correctly, and we will raise it again. If we allow despair to break our will, the New World wins." That evening, alone in the biting cold, Elias sat, sharpening his axe, the metallic shh, shh, the only sound against the vast silence. He pulled out the tarnished silver locket, the symbol of his failure and his oath. He vividly recalled the night of the London fire, the crackle of burning oak, the smell of burnt sugar and ash, and the sight of the frail Master Elias, whose face was already gray with fever and smoke inhalation.
"Elias," Elias had whispered, grasping his hand. "The fire. It took my savings. My wife, she has nothing. Go to the Virginias. Not for me, but for her. Build 10 times what you lost. My debt is forgiven, but your honor demands a future." The burden was twofold: the material debt of the money lost, and the spiritual debt of a promise made to a dying man. Elias hadn't just promised to make money, he had promised to create a future for Alara's widow, Mrs. Alara, and send for her. He realized now, staring at the hostile forest, that he had to be more than a carpenter. He had to be the architect of a new beginning, not just for himself, but for the life he was sworn to redeem. Part 5. The Unseen Enemy and the Covenant of Need. As the physical structure of the common house began to take shape, the next and most insidious enemy arrived: the New World winter combined with disease. Scurvy and dysentery swept through the camp, claiming the weak and terrifying the strong. The initial shared mission fractured. Fear metastasized into resentment. The separatists began to see the illness as God's judgment on the unrighteous, the indentured servants, and the adventurers like Elias. "It is God's wrath upon the worldly pursuits," thundered Elder Brewster, a stern, skeletal man. his voice hoarse from cold. "We came for faith, and we brought sin. We must purify the camp." Elias, nursing a feverish indentured servant, saw the danger in this moral division. A community divided by blame would freeze to death. Dr. Finch, surprisingly, stepped into the fray. He was a man of books, but now he spoke with the clear authority of logic. "Elder, your faith is a weapon against the soul's despair, but physics must govern the body's health. We are weak, not because of sin, but because of a diet lacking in citrus and fresh greens. Our enemies are cold and starvation, not the spiritual state of our neighbor." Finch argued that the settlers needed a covenant of need. The Puritan covenant was with God. This covenant must be with each other, based on necessity. The cook does not care if the wood is cut by a separatist or an apprentice. The sick need the care of the well. We are all equal under the axe of the wilderness. Elias, the builder, put Finch's philosophy into practice. He initiated a rotational labor system, pairing the strong and the weak, the pious and the pragmatic. He made the sharing of the dwindling food stores mandatory, enforcing it with the silent, formidable authority he had earned on the ocean. This was the profound, subtle shift. The purpose of the settlement was morphing from seeking religious purity or personal wealth into the sheer, agonizing task of collective survival. Elias's private debt was subsumed into this public necessity. Part 6. The Architect of Tomorrow. By mid-January, the Common House was complete, a rough-hewn, drafty beacon against the vast white expanse. It was not a monument to piety, but a monument to collaboration. They had survived the immediate landing and the initial wave of sickness. One clear, cold morning, Elias walked the perimeter of the fledgling settlement. He noticed a faint, unsettling sign. 3 small carved arrows pointing away from the camp. A moment of tense, mutual reconnaissance had occurred. The inhabitants of the land, the Native American tribes, were aware of the newcomers. Their true relationship with the land and with the original occupants was the next great challenge. Elias stopped at the highest point of the ridge, looking out at the boundless expanse of forest that swallowed the morning mist. He pulled out the silver locket. It was cold in his hand. He realized his original oath to repay a financial debt was insufficient for this new reality. That debt was a ghost of England. The debt he truly owed now was to the 8 souls he had saved on the ship, and the 40 souls he had helped shelter here. He was the anchor, and if he failed, they all sank. He did not need to be a wealthy ship owner to honor Alara. He needed to be a founder. He needed to build something that endured. He drove a small, thick wooden stake into the frozen ground. It wasn't a marker for a house. It was a survey marker for the future. Narrator. Voiceover, reflective and final. The Atlantic wind had stripped them bare. It had taken their comfort, their certainty, and their delusions of an easy paradise. In return, it had given them something far more valuable: resilience. Elias Thorne had left England with the private burning need to repay a debt of guilt. He stepped onto the New World shore with an oath to build a future. But the wilderness demanded a profound redefinition of his promise. It taught him that the true oath under the Atlantic wind was not an individual vow of redemption, but a shared, terrifying covenant of survival. It was the commitment to the man next to you, the woman tending the fire, and the small, drafty cabin they had wrestled from the frozen earth. This fragile seed of necessity, this fusion of Puritan communalism and raw, pragmatic self-interest, would define the nascent American character. They did not conquer the wilderness. They were hammered into a new shape by it. And as the sun rose, casting a pale, cold light over the ridge, Elias Thorne, shipwright, debtor, and reluctant founder, took his first fully committed breath in the land of his new vow, ready to face the long, brutal winter. The founding of the Republic began, not with a flourish of muskets, but with the quiet, determined swing of an axe, driven by the sheer, unvanquishable will to live.